Perseverance. It's one of my favorite words, and it immediately comes to mind to describe Monique Worrell, a former state attorney in Florida who was unjustly ousted from her post last year by Republican Governor Ron DeSantis. Just last month, Florida's Supreme Court ignored the will of voters and refused to reinstate Worrell to her position. In 2020, she ran on a progressive platform to be the state attorney for Florida's 9th Judicial Circuit Court. She ran with a plan. Worrell said she wouldn't prosecute low-level marijuana offenses, that she would seek alternatives to prison for first-time nonviolent offenders, and she promised to reform the juvenile justice system. She won her race in Central Florida with more than 2/3 of the vote. But in August of last year, Governor DeSantis suspended her for her lack of prosecution. Here's what he said about it then.
Refusing to faithfully enforce the laws of Florida puts our communities in danger and victimizes innocent Floridians.
DeSantis claimed, without any merit, mind you, that Worrell's practices led to an increase in violent crime. In response, she said this: under this tyranny, elected officials can be removed simply for political purposes and by a whim of the governor. And no matter how you feel about me, you should not be okay with that. The voters of the 9th Circuit overwhelmingly elected a person with a progressive approach to criminal justice. Yet Ron DeSantis subverted the will of the people and later appointed a prosecutor who nobody asked for. What happened to Worrell follows a national trend of Republican-controlled legislatures undermining the will of voters in progressive-leaning cities. Now, at least 17 states have attempted to strip power from progressive prosecutors and undermine the voters who elected them, including Republican-controlled state legislatures in Mississippi, Missouri, Ohio, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, and in Texas. In Florida, Monique Worrell is running now for the same position again. According to internal polling, she's beating her successor, Andrew Bain, by 11 points. Her campaign put out a statement in response to the Florida Supreme Court's decision, again, reinstating her, or talking about reinstating her, or against reinstating her, rather, apologies. It reads in part, quote, the court's decision is a troubling indication of the erosion of factual accountability and judicial independence in this state. It is a stark reminder that when politics take precedent over facts, the very foundation of democracy is at risk. For more on this, I am joined by Monique Worrell herself, the elected state attorney who served on the 9th Circuit Court of Florida. Monique, we talked literally on this platform last summer in August after Ron DeSantis had decided to remove you. Catch us up on everything that's been going on. What are you hearing from the voters out there since everything initially happened with you?
Well, thank you so much for having me. The voters here are outraged. They understand that our democracy is at stake. So my reelection at this point is not just about who they're choosing to be their state attorney, but also to take back the vote that was stolen from them. You know, as you mentioned earlier, there was no merit to the claims that were made as a basis for my removal. I won't even use the word as justifying my removal, as a basis for my removal. And what the Florida Supreme Court did was validate the fact that we don't need a basis, that there doesn't need to be any merit to these claims. And what we're seeing here in Florida is a preview to Project 2025.
Monique, one of the things that I think is interesting in terms of themes that emerged out of a lot of the racial unrest that we experienced post George Floyd and during that very, very tumultuous period in American history was this notion that people had the power, particularly in urban centers, to elect prosecutors and judges and people in the judiciary who shared their values and who would ultimately protect their rights and protect their civil rights. Can you talk about how this new attack on the judiciary from legislative houses across the country now puts that protection in extreme danger, particularly for communities of color?
Yeah, well, absolutely. In 2020, we saw a community together, honestly, in a way that I hadn't seen for much of my lifetime. So yes, urban communities became involved, but other communities surrounded them in support and saying, we need people who are going to recognize the injustices that lie in this system and actually do something about it. And if you listen to the transcript from Andrew Warren's suspension hearing, you'll find that that's defined as wokeness, acknowledging that there are injustices that have happened in the past and now shape our present, and trying to do something to fix it is defined as wokeness. And that is the wokeness that they are trying to roll back and come away from. That's the reason that they are whitewashing African-American history, if not pulling it all together, and rewriting history to make us believe that African Americans somehow benefited from being enslaved. So these are all of the things that we're seeing that are taking place. Again, Florida has been a building ground, I believe, for much of this, and they have individuals going through the pipeline, through the Heritage Foundation, through the Federalist Society, who are going on the judiciary, and they are, as is stated in the Project 2025 plan, MAGA loyalists. And they're the ones who are going to be replacing people like myself who have fought and worked to push our country and our system forward.
You're a former state attorney. I'm a former prosecutor. We're both Black people. A lot of people misunderstand what that function looks like and feels like. Can you just talk about, given everything that you've been through with the governor, with the state legislature and the state judiciary, you're running now. Why is this so important to you?
You know, it's important that you identify the fact that we are both Black people in this space, in a space that historically has not had a lot of Black people. When I was elected, there were less than 2% women of color who were elected state attorneys. When you look at the percentages of African Americans and people of color who work as prosecutors under elected and appointed state attorneys, those numbers are very low. Representation matters. It's so important because we need to bring different perspectives and life experiences to the justice system. And no, that's not just found in the color of your skin, but in the entirety of representation of experiences. So now you have individuals who are coming to the prosecutor side with experiences of family member who have faced the criminal legal system, of people in their neighborhoods, people in their churches who have dealt with the criminal legal system, and they've seen how it can be unfair. And we've seen how it can be unfair because this whole Project 2025 plan to give people from January 6th being able to escape responsibility for their actions has shown that we have a justice system that's set up for certain people and not for others. And when we apply the rules and the laws equally to everyone, now that's a problem. We've gotten way too progressive and we have to push off on that. And that is why we are seeing a rolling back of progressive labeled prosecutors, because we are trying to take the system forward. Who can be mad at progress? Progress is simply moving forward, but that's what has caused such a backlash because the system wasn't supposed to apply equally to everyone.
That was former Florida State Attorney Monique Worrell. Thank you for your time and good luck in your race. Velshi will be right back.